Are we good? Okay, today is, Planning Commission meeting on February 7th, 2024. Call the meeting to order. Welcome our guests and staff showed up. Approval of the minutes that are in your packet. Anybody have any concerns with these? Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion second?
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved, Chad.
Okay.
Liz, you have anything?
I don't.
Tim?
No, thanks.
Yep.
No, sir.
Larry? Bruce, you want to say anything?
No.
Okay. Julie? Bruce? Eli? Anybody else? Okay, we go down the line. Unfinished business, Chad?
No.
Okay, first thing, no zoning appeals cases?
No.
Not this one.
The amendment for the wineries, in, right?
Yeah, Mr. Ohm is here. He presented this. We've talked about it a while. This is kind of a bigger issue than a typical amendment that might just be a change of a setback or something like that. So I think it's probably appropriate that we have a bigger discussion about this. The board or the commission certainly has the option of either voting yes or no, but this might be something that we want to think about a little more. And then perhaps next month we would have something a little more concrete to vote on. So I'll let the commission decide that, but that was what I was thinking a little bit. I don't know if anybody's had any chance to discuss it. So I'll give a little bit of background. I'll let Mr. Ohm chime in anytime he wants to. So in the Deep Creek watershed right now, in the more agricultural districts, the rural districts, or the residential districts, we don't allow restaurants, we don't allow taverns, so most of those commercial uses are not permitted. With a special exception, you could do a banquet hall, a catering facility. You could also do neighborhood convenience. So those are kind of the two bigger, somewhat retail or assembly uses that would be allowed in these areas. So this would be a bit of many of those things. It has a bit of, it's serving food potentially. So I think that's how we need to try to figure out, is this something that would be suitable for the watershed and would fit in with those districts? I think I've handed this out. Everybody should have a copy. You can see what was proposed. Basically, this would be something accessory to an agricultural use. So this wouldn't be necessarily just a standalone restaurant that serves wine. This would be something accessory to an ag use, 20 acres. There's some setbacks there. It's been proposed at least 2 acres of grapes be used for the use. There's some screening. So all these have been proposed. So I guess I'd like a little feedback, maybe just in general, what everybody's thinking, and then maybe we could go through some of the details of this.
I mean, from what I see about it, I keep looking at the Wisp Resort has a resort in down in Virginia called Wintergreen, and one of the things that is very popular in Wintergreen is wineries or breweries, stuff like that. And to be honest with you, most of them are very well presented. There's not an issue with junk laying all around. I mean, it's a very nice looking product. The winery, especially the venues are very nice. I guess that's something we have to look at on the watershed, how you approach putting one in, and if there's criteria on everything else. I mean, you say we go by special exception, right?
Well,
no, you can't do a red, right?
This use was the amendment is proposed to be as an accessory to agricultural uses. That was one of the things I was going to ask. This may be more suitable to do as a special exception. Those other uses like catering facility, neighborhood convenience, they're a special exception. I think that would give the Board of Appeals a chance to look at this and determine if the hours are appropriate, if additional screening, lighting, things like that are appropriate. So I think it might be better to push it into that arena more than just something that will be allowed outright.
Anybody have any opinion on this?
Any specific location might be more harmful than another for that use.
Yeah,
As in a major residential residential development being right next to it or something like that.
It doesn't bother me so much because of the acreage requirement of at least being 20 acres.
Mhm.
And you have to, grapes on 2 acres.
Yeah, I think that's a way, I think, it does tie it into an actual agricultural use.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a comment on.
Yeah, go ahead.
On Mr. Owen, by the way, when I came and spoke to Eli and Chad originally, and they were very nice and helped me through the process, I basically went out to the other counties in Maryland and Virginia and pulled that language from those. So this is nothing I came up with myself. It's, I think Frederick County, some of this is from Frederick County, some from Howard County. So kind of established already, regulations that I thought made pretty good sense as well. So it's not something I dreamed up, if you will.
Debbie Austin, Garrett County Liquor Control Board. This winery type license would fall under a state manufacturing license. So a lot of the other criteria comes from the requirements of the state manufacturing license. Garrett County Liquor Control Board would not license or regulate a manufacturing facility. It would fall under the state, but the 20 acres comes from the state class 4 limited winery license as well.
You're saying it will fall under manufacturing
Yes.
facility?
You plan to manufacture
Mm-hmm.
to produce wine. So the local Garrett County Liquor Board regulates retailers.
So are you saying this is consistent with other counties or
But it appears to be
consistent with the state?
license with maybe a few different things. But the main thing on the state license is that a place listed on the license must be in compliance with zoning. So it falls, that's how it will fall back if you guys had any additional rules, regulations, conditions, concerns on it.
So it would be minimum, the state requirements plus anything that the county would add or increase.
That's correct.
This is or is not in a zoned area.
Well, that's why I was gonna bring the map up. So this is, it's hard to fit it all on here, but, so this is a Deep Creek watershed zoning map. If you look at this pink area, that's town center. That's where, near Glendale Road, north to the bridge, you've got that whole strip. Who knows, Arrowhead, restaurants and everything are permitted there. You head north on Deep Creek Drive, you've got another big strip of town center. That's where most of the commercial uses are pushed. As you look at these outlying areas, Lake Residential 1, the LR1, RR is rural resource, LR2, Lake Residential 2 on south into the ag resource lands. Those are the lands where it's very restrictive to do anything commercial. So what we're talking, we can pick which districts we want to allow this, but if we were to allow that in all of those, we are sending a different type of commercial use into those areas. So I think we need to balance how we do that. We have a lot of people who may assume that they bought houses there and have subdivisions with some protections of the ordinance, that this being mainly residential. So I think we need to keep that in mind and find a way, if everybody wants to approve this, that how are we balancing that we're kind of staying true to these districts that are primarily residential in nature and have a very limited commercial impact. Agriculture is permitted everywhere throughout the ordinance, so that's not an issue. So in any of these areas you can do agriculture. It's more just that different element of commercial that we're now adding to it.
And that's why I brought up the manufacturing and agricultural, how do you marry that? I mean, it's really intrigued me when you said manufacturing, because I'm looking at it like, I think if I remember the ones in Virginia that I stopped by and looked at, I thought that their product, like their wine and stuff, was, they had their grape arbors and they had their apple tree and that stuff on that site. But their I think they actually took everything to a different location. What they did inside the brewery or the winery was done there, but I think their bulk stuff was done someplace else, the way I understood it. I may be wrong, but that's what it looked like to me. But for the presentation of making wine and to making whatever, that was all done in the building, but then they had like a separate building or separate establishment to make the bulk, what they would put out on the market for sale. But I'm trying to figure out how you would, what property would you use? I mean, it is agricultural, because you're growing grapes, you're growing apples, you're growing whatever to make a product.
Well, I mean, let's just think about how many, if we look at this and we permit it, like how many properties are gonna have at least 20 acres to do that on, plus the other requirements of having the grapes on 2 acres. There, I mean, we're not talking about a lot of properties that you're gonna be able to do this on.
I think that will provide some protection. You're not gonna be able to do this on a 1 acre lot in the middle of a subdivision, you know, but, so it would be more, if we have a large subdivision bordering a farm, that may be where this comes into play.
I mean, yeah, I mean, how many properties you think it's gonna affect? You guys have any idea? How many acres, how many?
I haven't really done an exercise to determine that.
I mean, as far as the application goes, and I'm just sitting here voicing my opinion, is the application is something that is, well, when it's well done, is a very, it might add to a community, because, you know, you see the grapes, you see the, you know, everything's kind of natural like everybody wants now. And I know it's for whatever reason, down that corridor there in Virginia, it's a hot ticket. You have Stone Mountain, there's like 5 or 6 different ones right in a 5-mile stretch. And I just noticed that all of them were well kept, you know, well presented themselves. And I think that's something that we just have to decide where you're gonna allow them to be established. You can get in the watershed. Outside the watershed, it shouldn't be an issue, right?
Yeah, outside the watershed, we don't have that, other than the towns, and the towns have zoning, but not very many big properties, so it's not really an issue there.
Now, let me ask you a question, sir. Do you think it is necessary to have the wineries inside the watershed for business, or do you think it's something that become more of a destination type?
My property just happens to be right on the edge.
Okay.
I'm the last property that my neighbor can do anything he wants, I guess, or
Right.
something like. And I'm in Ag 1, I think, is that what it is, Chuck?
You're an ag resource, I believe, there on
Ag
Sand Flat
resource.
Road.
So that's the only reason why I said that's
Right,
where I am.
right.
And I mean, I was lucky enough, it's a pretty piece of property, so we thought it'd be a good place for agribusiness, and we're kind of halfway in between Oakland and the lake, so we thought,
Right.
it'd be nice use of the land.
And that's why I asked that question. I knew it looked like that property was in, right? And I think that you try to deal with it. You want to try to do a broad brush definition for it and deal with it now, or do it with a case by case basis? How many do you think are going to come down the road?
Well, in the ordinance, we have to set forth regulations that would apply throughout the whole Deep Creek watershed. So,
I understand that. And what I'm saying is his property, one that looks like it could work for what he's at.
I believe this is his property right here, maybe? I don't know if you
Yes,
recognize,
yes,
yeah, so right there, so it's very close to the border. But we always have to think not just about one property, we have to think about throughout the watershed. So the 2 ways to do it are, you could say, make one rule for everything that's AR, or you make, and then you decide individually each zone whether it's allowed. But I think the acreage will, in the town center, there's not a lot of larger properties, so I think the acreage will push it to that. I mean, the ag is available and or allowed any place in the watershed, so just because it says Lake Residential 1 doesn't mean there couldn't be larger properties there too. So it's not, we'll have to think about that. How are we going to allow it or make it a special exception in every single district?
Well, I guess, Liz, what do you look at the property? Are we only going to look at it from an agricultural standpoint? Let it, deal with it that way?
To me, I look at it a couple of ways. So you have the acreage requirements and the fact that it has to be an ag. And on top of that, you have Maryland regulating it. And other counties have consistent structures. I'm not sure why we wouldn't allow it. Because I don't think we're really talking about that many properties that could actually do it, provided with the weather and the season here. I don't think it would be like we're gonna have 20 people signed up immediately or whatever to try to do it. I think it's a very small area that could actually apply this definition and match it.
Bruce?
Is this a use that's identified at all in our ordinance? Is it restricted? Is it identified in any way?
No, I mean, agriculture is permitted, taverns are not permitted, restaurants are not permitted in these, like LR1 and AR. So you have elements of it that are addressed. And again, the banquet hall type assembly use you could potentially do with a special exception. So elements of the use are addressed in several parts, but there's nothing specific to this.
Is this something he could apply for a variance for, or what would happen if he?
No, if it's not addressed in the ordinance, it's basically considered that it's not permitted. So this is really the only way to do it, to make it an amendment where we address it specifically. So I kind of prepared just some general questions. It seems like everybody is generally agreeable to this, is that correct? I'm getting that impression from everybody. Would it be acceptable if we kind of went down through some of these questions? I think that would allow staff to have a general idea of how everybody feels about that, and then maybe we could put together a little something using your amendment as a basis and then clarifying everybody else's thoughts in here about whether they're agreeable to that or want to tweak it. Does that sound acceptable?
I have one more question.
Okay.
Say if you're permitted to put a winery in, are you looking at it more as a tasting facility and a wine type of facility? Are you looking at it as a food service? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so similar to how what you were describing, we have good friends in the Virginia Industry and Wine that have farm wineries and in Texas. And for my desire would be, it's a very good experience. So there'll be a tasting room there. We are gonna have, of course, grow grapes there as well. We will eventually make wine there as well, right? When we get the grapes, we may purchase some ahead of time, but it's going to be a facility, yeah, where you can taste wine and drink wine and like a wine like you've been to in Virginia. I don't plan on serving food, to be honest with you. I don't want to be in the restaurant business, other than, like a typical would be a refrigerator with sausages and cheese in it, and maybe eventually pizza, but that's about it. I've seen a winery do pizza, and I always love the pizza, go in there and have the pizza with the wine, but that would be the end of it. I don't want to be in the restaurant.
Well, if you had a special, let's say if I want to get married there and I want to have your rent your space for a special event, you could do it that way. You cater the food or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any plans to do that right now, to be honest with you. I really don't want to do that. We thought about other things too, but I just.
Yeah, and I'm asking that question not to put you in a corner. I'm asking that question because I feel like that is something we have to approach too, because there's going to be different levels of winery.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have the one that's going to do what you're talking about doing, and you're going to have the one that's going to do the full-fledged restaurant, bar, whole 9 yards. And you do the one that has like a venue for a wedding. That's why I think we got to be careful on how you. I agree with the premise. I love that road where you drive down and see all of them. I like that. It's just how do we put the verbiage in to protect people around.
Just an FYI, we already have verbiage in there that takes care of banquet halls and catering facilities. So if that were the case that a specific applicant would want both, they would be applying for 2 separate special exceptions.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, how we can make this clean, and that's the reason I brought that up. And there's 3 different levels right there I just brought up.
Right.
And I'm sure there's 4 more after that, but I'm just saying,
Sure.
in those 3 case scenarios, he's gonna sell wine, or make wine, have wine tasting, people sit around, drink some wine, talk to each other, whatever it is. That's what his experience will be. The next guy may come in and wanna put tables in there to have, finger, whatever, sandwich, or whatever at that point. So then you gotta deal with that. I guess what I'm saying is, how do you make that all work in one, or you do it, like I said, that's why I asked about doing it case by case.
Well, I think one of my first suggestions would be, instead of just allowing this as a permitted accessory use, we make it a special exception. So that allows the board to have some leeway with every case. They can look at it, they can ask for a plan about what somebody's proposing. If somebody says, I want to be open 24 hours a day serving wine, the board may say, no, that's not appropriate. And they can listen to the neighborhood, they can to react to some specifics on that property. So that would be my first suggestion. So I don't know how everybody feels about that, but I think that we would make this a special exception, and that will allow us to have some look at specifics on each case.
Because then we go back to where the big term is agriculture. If he's gonna grow grapes, we can't tell him how to grow grapes. We
Well,
can't
I
tell him
think
he's got-
so.
We can't tell him he's gonna have, you know, what I mean, if I put a grape arbor in and I make my own wine, and I set it out by the road and sell it for $10, you know what I'm saying? I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm not trying to
You
stir
still
the
have to
pot.
have 2 acres of grapes though, I mean, it's a lot of grapes.
But I'm understanding that, I'm just saying, but it's simple, I'm trying to simplify it to where, you know, he's gonna have an agricultural product, and he's gonna be on agricultural land. We gotta figure out is, what's the definition of what do you do beyond when you're doing the grapes? You know, and then we're gonna put restrictions on this wineries, or whatever they're gonna be called. But what are those restrictions gonna be if all he's gonna do is grow grapes and make a little wine, you know? I mean, that's what I'm saying, cause he could do that without. I mean, grow grapes, you know what I'm saying, I'm playing that part because.
Well, I think the wine tasting is where it comes, you're
Right.
now assembling people and
And
you're going.
I pushed him into answering some questions that I'm sure
Mhm.
he's not completely knows what he's gonna do totally yet, and it's just,
Mhm.
but it's just, I'm saying that when you start doing this, again, we're gonna try to, for lack of a better term, police something that,
Mhm.
at some point, how do we?
Well, I mean, I think some of
The only one
that,
ever happens in Deep Creek watershed, you know?
Well, that special exception would address some of that, I guess, each time it comes up.
I would just like to see how the other counties that allow it do it.
so that might be so I have kind of a list here. One of those is 2 acres used in production appropriate? And that could be something I think that staff, we can look at a little bit, try to look at some other counties, see what they're doing, and see if that seems appropriate. If everybody is generally agreeable, that's kind of what I'd like to get a feel for from all of you. If you're generally agreeable with some of these things, staff can do a little bit more research and then maybe bring something back to everybody with our recommendation. So, does the 20 acres seem reasonable? I'll just go through some of these. Does that seem like a reasonable cutoff that we would say you have to have at least 20 acres to do this?
Yes, to me it does.
Yes.
Okay. Does the 2 acres generally seem reasonable, that 2 acres should be somehow devoted to that actual product?
Growing up from, like, I don't know, I guess, I think there should be maybe a percentage or something flexible.
Okay. We can look into that a little more. I think we'll start with that kind of general idea that 2 acres, and then maybe we can look around at some other verbiage. Do the setbacks sound okay? So this says all winery-related structures and uses excluding cultivation areas shall be at least 75 feet from a public road right-of-way and 100 feet from all other lot lines. Does that sound reasonable to give some protection to other properties?
75 feet from the road. Is that?
That would be much more than-
75 feet from, say, the county road, or is it 75 feet from?
Any public road right away, so any private road, any
Okay,
any
I
public
just want to
road.
clarify.
We would say a driveway serves 1 to 3 people if it's not named, if it's actual road, whether it's public or private. Typical house setbacks in these rural or residential areas would be 40-foot front and rear and 15 side, so it would be much bigger than that.
Is that also from state language? Or
That was taken from a county, I believe, yeah, I didn't,
County.
and I may have, it may actually be higher than that, I can't remember, because we talked, and maybe it's made some adjustments, but, I mean, in my opinion, it should be at least that, to be honest with you, especially since you have 20 acres, I don't think, anybody's gonna have a problem on 20 acres being 100 feet back from the lot line.
So does that sound generally okay, those setbacks as proposed?
You want to, yeah,
State winery license doesn't mention setbacks other than mentioning has to be in compliance with zoning, but,
Okay.
the one question, like, the state license allows them to, serve tastings or sell or provide at no charge, so were you thinking of, for this board, also besides just arriving for tasting to do what's allowed under the state license?
Yes.
Okay, and, the state license restricts different types of, items that they can prepare, sell, or serve, such as food items, so there's a list they must follow on that as well. I'll have Chad provide you guys with a copy of
Please.
this license.
Thanks.
Yeah, and our idea is to let people bring food, which is typical for wineries, because again, I don't wanna be in the food business, so to speak, but, right. Let them bring their own picnics and so forth.
I think the food part will be a challenge that we have to find a way that we're not saying this is necessarily a restaurant, but I also don't know that we want to get into policing that, although maybe some of the staff will want to go out there every day and check, see what food is being served, but, I think that's something to think about, where do we draw that line? So that was one of my big questions. I think Debbie's state law that she gave me a copy of, it spells out specific things, so we could perhaps refer to that, but that can change, that could get more broad or more restrictive, so we have to be aware of that. One of the other things, there's screening mentioned. I don't know if we want to establish specific screening elements here in the use itself, or we would allow that up to the board as part of the special exception. They may be able to look at it if it's a heavily wooded property, they may not need any screening. If it's one that's very close, they may be able to look at that site specific and decide if screening is appropriate.
That's a more typical approach for things that are in special exceptions, is for the zoning board to, review that on a case-by-case basis based on, what's surrounding the property.
Does anybody have any thoughts about that, about leaving that more to the board if we let this be a special exception?
I'm keeping my shut on it.
Well, I'm trying to get a little feedback here. I mean, again, staff can take this and.
I look at it like that's part of the ambiance of the winery, is having open space, so people, when they drive by, they see it, and it becomes part of the scenery, you know what I mean?
Be sure you get in here what the board wants, because we know from past experiences, things that are special exceptions are pretty much approved unless we can prove they're worse in this area than any place else in the zoning district. We've run into that before, so if you guys have any conditions that you want to see, the board in a special exception, historically our board, the zoning board will ask for certain conditions like screening, different things like that. So, but just beware, if you make this a special exception, you're basically saying it's okay. Right, Jeff?
That's a good point. Yeah, so it would have to be, I think the other Bruce mentioned, a site that's very, very bad, has unique circumstances where it's just totally not appropriate, you may be able to deny it. But otherwise, the assumption is it will be approved. Conditions may be if you have let's say you had a subdivision next to it and they all have big concerns about trespassing, that might be something where the board could say, we think some fencing is appropriate there. Or lighting might be appropriate, or hours or something, but I think those things could be tweaked on a case-by-case basis as issues come up.
And I agree that the special exception, it looks like it's the only way you're gonna be able to work this, fair fashion, I guess is the best way of putting it. That way, at least you're gonna know up front, you gotta put a fence up, or you gotta do, when you go for the exception.
Okay. Does anybody have an issue with point G about allowing some accessory retail sales? This seems to be limited to items promoting the farm winery. Anybody have an issue with that part of it?
Those types of things are also mentioned as special exceptions in a lot of the zones. That is like a kind of a convenience store and retail.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The small scale wouldn't be out of keeping with the general intent of those areas.
So I have a question. So as this is written, like the farm winery wouldn't be able to sell any other alcohol other than what's produced on the farm, correct?
Those are good questions. That's something we should probably think about. If they're producing it there.
It allows them to produce bulk wine fermented by a manufacturer licensed or blend the wine. And Palmas brandy production, purchase Palmas brandy only for blending the wine. Import, export, and transport its wine in accordance with the section, produce wine. I mean, the state law allows them some leeway in how they make it, so they don't have to produce all of the grapes on site. But, my experience with state laws is in each legislative session, there's a potential for another allowance to expand their privileges, and that's where, I don't know how you guys would want to monitor that, because every legislative session, there's usually a manufacturer legislative bill that changes something or increases something.
Now I'll throw another clog in the wheel.
Mhm.
You got a winery. Now what if you go winery/distillery?
Well, that was my last question. Do we want to,
I know.
as we're doing this, do we want to think about farm brewery and farm distillery? Some of the other counties have done that and expanded it. So as we're doing this, do we want to define those terms and have very similar things? If you have 2 acres devoted to those uses and 20 acres, it would also be appropriate to do those.
I would think, But then that comes back to what you're reading in the manufacturing stuff is, we wanna do this, when we give you your permit to build a winery, you wanna make a winery/distillery, so you're covering all the bases. I don't know, 'cause you're gonna be,
This is just for limited water.
That was case specific to wine, so just FYI.
Yeah, certainly all the details will be handled through some of the liquor control at the state level. I think we need to think more about, do we want the use in the watershed? And do we want to have specific limits on it? There certainly will be another layer of regulation I think we will need to point to say you've got to satisfy the state as well. But, if there's anything beyond that you want to make a little stricter or make sure that we're being careful of, I think that's when we need to think of those things.
Yeah, I'll just speak real quick to the question there, or the comment, but I think the reason why, when I looked into this, the reason why the language in the other counties in both Virginia and in Maryland are that way they are is because it does take time to get your vineyards going. Most people don't wait until, 2.5, 3 years down the road, so they will have wine produced off-site, and then eventually, so my plan personally would be to start up, I have, like I said, relations with other vineyards, have wine made off-site initially, but the ultimate goal within, 2 to 3 years, perhaps 4, would be to have that facility all on mine. But the other thing you have too is you're gonna have to buy grapes elsewhere, because this is not the best grape growing region, which again is why I think they have 2 acres in most of Maryland as well, because, this is not south of France, this is not California, and so on and so forth. So you can grow grapes, but it's limited the types you can grow, and a lot of them aren't the kind that people want to drink. So that's why so again, the spirit for me is, yes, I'm going to have a vineyard and a winery and a tasting. It's not probably initially going to be all made on site, in fact it won't be, but eventually, yes, there will be a huge portion of that will be made on site.
Yeah, I think you have a clause in here about 2 acres of grapes being planted and established within 2 years, kind of addressing that.
Yeah, which is how they worded it, I think for that reason.
I have one other question before, is there any more on these? I have one other question, and I probably won't ask you more. How's it gonna affect, when he makes it a winery, what that property then becomes distinguished as? For tax purposes, what's his property then become distinguished as after if it's agricultural now, it is being charged taxes as agricultural, right?
That'd be up to
I'm just
tax
asking that
office, I don't
question.
know.
Kind of
What
state
are you gonna
question.
change the distinctions of property to after he?
It would be ag, correct? It would go to ag.
Well.
We just look at the
We're not
districts.
gonna be involved in
Right.
that period, the tax office is gonna decide that. I personally would think that they're gonna put some kind of commercial retail tag on that though, quite frankly.
Right, then
Because
when
it's-
you retag the property.
It's gonna have an accessory use, it's gonna be different.
But they're gonna, I don't wanna say that out loud,
But
I'm not a
that's a
lawyer.
state decision.
Yeah,
In
that
front
doesn't
of the
impact
lawyer,
zoning.
Is that what you said?
If I might also just, I think those 3 uses ought to be lumped together, because otherwise you're gonna be back to the drawing board in about 5 minutes to redo it for distilleries and breweries. And then I forgot my last thought. I was trying to hold them to myself, until I had a moment. The wine making part of it, I don't think any of our offices are gonna be involved with what's being sold there, period. It's gonna be a wine tasting place, and I would think we would allow the state alcohol board to, and follow their lead on that. It's my recommendation.
You're gonna,
Because we don't have anyone to police that. We're not gonna go out there and see if he's pouring, Napa Valley wine into Deep Creek Lake Cellars, bottles, you know.
but it's questions that need to be answered. You know, you got a three-edged sword now. You've got the planning side of it, you've got the manufacturing side of it, and you got the business side of it, the taxation side of it. You guys are right to know what's gonna happen. We're going to special exception and try to get him a permit, right?
Yeah.
But we need to know why, you know, what's gonna happen with his taxes, what's gonna happen with his,
Well, taxes, I don't think we care about.
We don't.
I know you don't,
We
I'm just saying, I'm putting that out to, you know, everybody should, we put this together, it all needs to go together as a,
Yeah, I would say Mr. Ohm needs to think about that, or whomever might apply for this permit, but, from this board and the zoning board's point of view, we should just be looking at the use itself and how it might affect the community.
but you're also not gonna change the distinction from agricultural to commercial.
Zoning, all we care about are those zoning districts.
Right. And that's what I'm saying,
So,
there's gonna be a step somewhere where you're gonna have, the property have to be addressed.
So if there's
That's
certain
easy
zones
question
you
to
don't
answer.
want it to be, and you could make it a non-permitted use in certain areas and by special exception in the ones that you would like, feel that it's adequate.
I mean, it would be pretty easy to look at the counties that allow it and see how it's taxed. Just pull up their SDAT sheet and see how they do it.
I think our staff would be doing that. We'd look at maybe like Winchester, Virginia, similar to counties that look like us, and see how they're dealing with it. Frederick County might be a good one. They've got some things out there.
so if I could summarize, and you can all correct me if I'm wrong, everybody is generally okay with it. Everybody is generally okay with expanding this to also farm brewery and farm distillery. Everybody's generally okay with the acreage, the setbacks. The things that I think staff needs to look at a little bit are, how are we defining that food service? Do we want to have some specifics on that? And then the production, you know, is 2 acres, do we need to have some different language there? So if everybody agrees with that, I think staff can take this, tweak it a little bit, put it in that special exception format, get a little more information on the 2 acres and the food, and maybe come up with some potential language, and then we could have maybe a vote next month, or look at that. Does that sound acceptable, or?
Need a vote on this?
I think if what I just said was okay, you would basically be saying, directing staff just to prepare some more information on it.
Okay, I need a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
you wanna put any caveats on or anything?
No.
I will mention one other, you might wanna add cideries to
Okay.
that.
That's okay. Second, you seconded the motion?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Okay.
All opposed?
And we'll keep Mr. Ohm informed as we do things too, because it was your proposal. I think we discussed that. That was probably a bigger question than just this amendment, but we'll make sure this is not something that is getting beyond what you had originally proposed as well. That sounds acceptable to you?
Yeah, perfectly fine, thank you.
Okay.
If you wanna stay, you're welcome. If not, you're welcome to go.
Well, I'll have to go back to work.
A lot of fun.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we do have a couple subdivisions.
What do you got next, Chad?
I think we got subdivisions next.
Cathedral Spring?
Yeah, so Cathedral Springs, we've been doing a lot of those. I think there are 4 lots left after these two. So again, this is the overall subdivision. This is in 1,000 acres. This is Crows Point Road. And this month we have 2 more finals. We've got lot 10. Again, Crows Point Road, existing road, so nothing for us to look at in terms of road design at this point. These are all just lots conforming to the original preliminary plan along a existing private road. So we've got the final for lot 10 and the final for lot 16. Now I've got signed plats, health department, public utilities are okay with everything.
Everybody good with this? Motion? Motion second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved, Jack.
The next one is property owned by Beitzel. This is a commercial use. This is a conveyance for potentially they're going to sell this building to the Binninger Volunteer Fire Department. So since it's not a residential lot, it becomes a major, but the building is existing, there's a shared entrance, so really no new improvements. This is kind of an administrative issue that it becomes a major subdivision just because it's not residential. But no infrastructure to be put in or anything like that.
Any questions on this one? Motion?
I'll make it.
Motion second?
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved, Jack.
Okay. So now I think we're ready for the 2024 transportation priority list with Sierra. I sent a copy of
Sherry, you want to come
last
up here and
year's.
listen?
Yeah, if I can plug into the machine.
Okay, plug into Timmy's side there.
Yeah.
Okay. Just throw him out of his seat.
Thank you. Anyway, so, it's like budget time and legislation's in, so it's time for us to kind of think about, what kind of requests we wanna make to MDOT for like the projects, for this year's, capital, improvement plan. And so, kind of building off of last year's list, I've managed to reach out to all of our mayors, and I plan to go to the mayor's meeting this evening, and the commissioners should be there and represented. Is that right, Larry? Like Paul or somebody from the county will be at the mayor's meeting this evening?
Speak up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will somebody from the commissioners be at the mayor's meeting this evening?
I know I will, I'm not sure anybody else.
All right. So, let's see.
Are you plugged in?
I am plugged in. So many things. So, anyway, let's see here. So last year's priority letter, I'm just gonna quickly go through like the projects that we requested. There will be some changes to the order of the list. I guess for you guys, I want you to think about anything new or anything that should be on my radar. When I ask this of the mayors, if it's like small, like, you know, I seen a pothole, or this is an issue, or this intersection, like there's something weird about it, let me know. If it's a maintenance issue, I can just get it on their maintenance list and we don't have to write it on the letter. Usually it just gets done, which is kind of cool. And then for the bigger ones, then we can kind of put it in play and, you know, get it done in the order of operations. So the first one is always the, can I share my screen, Chad?
It wasn't coming up before.
I'm not plugged in all the way. Oh, bummer. Well, if it's not going to play long, then
You can try it on mine if you want me to do this.
whatever. So the first one I have is US 219, the extension to the state line. So that project, they're going through NEPA right now, and basically anytime they find you know, some sort of challenge or obstacle like a wetland or historic property or something, they basically just narrow down those alignments and eventually we'll get to the one that they're going to use. So the construction funding is kind of on hold for that, but we're well on our way for engineering and it should be on track.
Are you just, sorry, are you just showing last year's? I can bring that up.
Yeah, I'm just,
Okay.
I have a better version of the, like, I don't have the scanned versions of the maps, so that's kind of what I was showing. So if you want to go through that PDF, mainly just the maps of the projects. The next one was our request for planning study to do a concept plan to connect the towns and parks along 135. We got that grant. Haven't started it yet. I'm waiting for some other matching funds. But I think this one will be on our list this year, but it'll be further down because I don't have anything to implement. Ideally, next year I'll have some concrete ideas that, like, we need the sidewalk here, or I need engineering to do, you know, pedestrian bridge or whatever it is. So very excited about that. Then we also have Trader's Landing. We've talked to the property owners. They're open to rearranging their entrances. State Highway has done some borings, trying to figure out where they are on the status of that to kind of look at that crossing and maybe restripe the lanes to queue traffic better and to provide like an island for pedestrians. So hopefully that will be, I'd like to keep that on our list. Ooh, looks like it might be doing something in terms of connections on the machine.
That's
and
mine.
then, what's that?
I put that up there.
No, but my screen
okay.
just like did something weird. So the other one I have is the feasibility study for Oakland to Harrington Manor. Once again, we've got funding for that. It's underway. I'm waiting for some matching funds, so I'm hoping we can start it in the summer. Lots of public outreach, and we'll see what becomes of that. And then hopefully for the next letter, we'll actually have, you know, we need to build a bridge or we need engineering or whatever the next step for that. Number 5 is Oakland Bypass, and that's always on our list. The project, though we don't have full community support, it's important for us to keep it on there, mainly because we've gone through so many steps of approval in terms of state highway, and it's better just to leave it sit there than to like wipe the slate clean, because it saves us a lot of time and effort in doing it. We would have to do reevaluations of things, but that lift would be much less expensive than a whole fresh version of that. And if we could somehow pull that off, I'm sure our towns and commissioners would, be happy for that funding. The other one I have is taking a look at some pedestrian concept plans for like McHenry from like Mosser Road all the way down to Glendale Road. Just some places there's lots of pavement and lots of side of road, but people go really fast. Other places it's super narrow, and I always see like runners or people walking dogs, and like they're just not protected. I think we could be a little smarter about that, and it's on a state road, so I'm hoping like maybe they'll provide some sort of concept. Grantsville, they have a concept plan for extending their sidewalks on the east side of their town to like River Avenue through like the Artisan Village and along Route 40. So the next part would be engineering for that and construction funding. There was a truck study done looking at, providing additional truck routes other than 219 to kind of avoid the lake and also Oakland and like alleviate the traffic through the freight related traffic. So there's still operational improvements to Sand Flat Road on our list. And then another, number 9 was our north-south bicycle pedestrian connections. Originally, Oakland had asked for streetscapes. Streetscapes aren't really a thing, and also the private landowners don't generally want a sidewalk that then they have to maintain. There's probably better ways to do this, and maybe other routes. So I have a brand new plan for this, so I'll unveil that in a moment. Then we have Friendsville. They requested a sidewalk on First Avenue. I think there's a little bit of sidewalk under the I-68 interchange, like the bridge, but take it all the way down to Oak Street. The traffic controls along 3rd Street here for like Alder and Oak are from like the 70s and not super great or synced up, and I'd like some new signals. That would be nice, or at least ones that were modern. And then, same for that. Here, then I have like a concept plan to connect accident. It's like bisected by 219. There's not any crossings, but we got parks on the other side. There's a school, so eventually I'd probably put in like a transportation alternatives grant to kind of come up with a plan to connect those things a little better. I'd like to just have it on there, so if somebody's like, "What's your wish list, Sierra?" There it is. It's on there. And then the trail to connect like Friendsville to the Yock River Lake, that's number 16, and that kind of wraps up what we had last year. In terms of new projects that aren't yet sorted, I know Friendsville, when they're working on their comprehensive plan, and one of the things they brought up is the lot beside the Dollar General. It's rather small, but it's not really great for development. They have suggested maybe making it like a tractor trailer park and ride, because there is no like overnight parking at the visitor center there off of 68, that rest stop. So maybe we could provide that for that, and also the trucks, they'll just park on the side of the road, and when you go to plow or you get out of the Dollar General, you can't see. So then we can have a designated area for that. So I'm going to suggest that. Kitzmiller also was requesting some connections to Wolfden State Park, so maybe through like rec trails or something. So I haven't reached out to DNR's trail planner, but perhaps there's a good collaboration between us that we could utilize, which is kind of exciting. Then we have some earmark funds for Meadow Mountain to Deep Creek State Park, some sort of trail. So I'd like to do some planning and right-of-way acquisition. So mainly just to make the state aware that we're working on these things. We'd like their cooperation, and eventually I'll need more money, so have that on there. And then the rest of the list is about the same. I'm going to leave it up to the commissioners and the mayors to work together to prioritize these. And then my like special like sprinkle in the body of the letter, not a listed not a listed numbered item. There's a program that the federal government, Federal Highway Administration, will open up this month. It's called Safe Streets for All. I was looking at the award list. Some people get awards for like $20 million, which I like that. And so I would like that. So I'd like to put in an application. It's only 12 pages, and I'm like, I like that too. So I think the county, in cooperation with the town of Oakland and Mountain Lake Park, I would like to take a look at 219 and to like connect those pedestrians and, you know, unprotected passengers, and then also take a look at all of our local traffic flows and kind of get a context, like improve Oakland and Mountain Lake Park's traffic flows, and also provide like trails or some way for people to get to the health department, you know, and the hospital, like by foot, or using some other like, instead of being dependent on our cars, and connect the parks and everything. So like kind of have I've been calling it Oakland Pathways is kind of like my title for my project. So have traffic engineers kind of look at how the flows of traffic are, see what kind of improvements we can make. And then the nice thing about the Safe Streets for All, you don't really need to have a price tag. You kind of just have a concept. Then they would work with you to develop an implementation of this plan, and then we can ask for more money from that same program. And so I'm hoping, because the Oakland Bypass project is it's just kind of there, this might provide some intermediate improvements to our existing infrastructure. So I'm excited about that. So I might ask for a letter of support for that later, whenever I have that a little more fleshed out. Any questions, additions, thoughts?
There's still a lot of money available for the parks. I mean, like the state parks and stuff, if you notice, like grants and stuff for the trails.
It's going down. Like it's kind of like lags right behind the real estate market. So program open space funds, I haven't got my budget for that yet, but I know like we didn't get the LPPI money, like special funding last year. I'm not expecting it this year, though. I think the Office of Outdoor Recreation is getting funds for like inclusion, and I have a bunch of projects on my list. I'm like, we should probably like get that. So, and that reminds me, I probably want to add 2 more projects to this. I think I want to go for rec trails funding for Lockland to replace their boardwalk and to make their trail more AD accessible. And also Fork Run, I'd like to apply for a rec trails grant to do an intermediate bike track, because we did the accessible one this past fall. So those will also be on the letter.
I just wonder when that money would run out, you know?
Eventually, yeah, like probably. So I think we'll get back to like regular programming on that this year, which is like for the whole county is like $350,000-$400,000.
Anything else? Any roads you want fixed while?
Yeah, now's the time to say something.
I'd like to see 135 looked at. Like from the, it's all falling away on the, going towards the, that, I think is that a county or state road? That's a county road, isn't it?
It's state
Oh,
road.
it's
Which-
Sand Flat State?
Sand Flats is county road.
No. Just needs a pretty rough shape, couple things.
Oh, with the pavement or?
Yeah, it's just starting to fall away. It's just
On the
starting to
edges?
deteriorate, yeah.
Okay. Sand Flat or 135?
Sand Flat.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll make some
Wow.
operational stuff.
It's one of those things you notice when you drive it all the time.
So Sierra, your plan, you'll be updating that letter and then presenting it next month?
That's the,
So
yep.
if anybody has any comments or anything you want
And
suggested?
yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to share a draft prior
Reach
to
out.
then, so any thoughts or, to that would be good.
Then hopefully next month you'd all be approving it and then we'd send it on to the commissioners.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very good.
Trader's Landing's definitely necessary.
Yeah, I
It's
think,
so dangerous there.
yeah, I think I'm hoping that we'll see some progress, like physical improvements, this coming year with that, so I'm excited.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chad, anything else on your docket for today?
I think that's it.
March 6th, 2024 is the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Be safe in your travels. Meeting adjourned.